This episode of The Breakfast Dish is brought to you by Inventures, your front row seat to what's next. Register now for Inventures 2022, where you can learn, share, and be inspired by the startups, entrepreneurs, investors, and global thought leaders who are redefining the future. Inventures runs June 1st to 3rd in Calgary and online, featuring more than 150 sessions, over 250 speakers, international keynotes, expert panels, startup pitch events, networking opportunities, and more. Reserve your pass now at inventurescanada.com. That's inventurescanada.com.
Tell me your dreams over bacon and eggs. We'll share a laugh and a story and even a wish on the breakfast dish.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 72 or 71. It depends on which order we recorded them in. We haven't got a clue. That's what this show is all about. Griffin and I make this stuff up as we go along, and this is just what happens. So it could be episode 72. It could be episode 71. It could be episode 79. I have no clue. Griffin?
This is a good bit. I like this
bit. It's a good bit. Just the bit where I talk about we don't know what we're doing.
It's about that we have no clue. That's what the show's about. Karen, what's the breakfast dish really about?
Well, the truth is we don't really have a clue. Not everyone has a clue about what's going on in arts in Alberta.
Oh, I
right?
see.
And,
okay.
And we like to cover things that are happening in Alberta that we think people will be interested in. And that could be writing, it could be dance, it could be theater, it could be visual art, it could be singing, concerts, improv. And that's what we do on The Breakfast Dish. And who are we, Griffin?
I want to, you know what? Who we are doesn't matter. I want to offer one more form of art that I don't know that we've talked about enough, and I think deserves some appreciation. And that is the art of writing a business email. I am currently on a 45-minute high after sending what I consider to be a very, very good, very scary, important business email. And I think everyone relates to it. It's just the idea of like, what different kinds of punctuation do you use? When are you allowed to use an exclamation mark? If you use too many periods, you can't seem that uninterested to write this email. So I'm feeling really good. This is a new kind of elation that people I don't think get to experience until they're at least 19.
And I hope you didn't put in too many exclamation points.
I honestly, I don't know. Because there's also context of like what you're talking about, right? I've never sent like a medical business email, but I can't imagine they're like, hi, hey, buddy. You know what I mean?
It's time for your checkup. It's time for your colonoscopy! Exclamation point, exclamation point.
Although a real interesting point of academic trivia is that one of my friends who's a teacher, they're replacing the unit on how to write a letter, like marking if you incorrectly put like the business letter name and address and that kind of stuff, right. They're replacing that with the business email section of schooling, which I think is very smart.
Good. Oh, for sure. For sure. And you would have a better idea, just to give the listeners a hint as to who we are, about how to write a good business email if your mother had given you any guidance in that as you were growing up.
I'm sure. No. Who gave me? Well, now hold on, because when I was like 12 or 13, I really fell into those chainmail traps. Like those things that you would send that had like 80 questions about nothing, but at the top it said, if you don't send this to 5 people, your grandma's gonna kill a dog or something like that. Like it was bad stuff. I was young and I had emails of some of your friends. I might have had Cole's email. Anyway, I would like send these out. And eventually I think you and Dad had to come to me and be like, you can't be doing this to our professional work contacts.
And yet you may have overloaded Col Czeke's email with a bunch of chain email junk mail. And he still agreed to be on our podcast with performer, actor, and friend Mike Keir. Welcome, Mike and Cole.
Yay!
We're allowed to talk now, right? Hello.
Oh, yes.
Cole, hi.
Hey, so nice to see y'all. I was just, I feel like over the pandemic, I crossed some sort of email Rubicon where I just have no F's to give it up about email anymore. It's purely
good for you.
Get it out kind of thing. I just go into like an email fugue state. And it's a bit of a Rorschach test. If I go back and look at emails, I'd be like, oh, wow, I was really angry at the concept of email that day because there are no exclamation marks and it is very terse. Or I'd be like, ooh, that was a day where I moved my computer into a room with a window and I was very cheerful. I think the nadir was when I, early on pandemic, and I started meeting my psychologist over Zoom, and the email record between my psychologist and I back and forth is a fascinating document. Just this 200 email thread that's very telling about what my mental state was early on.
Release the psychologist manifesto.
Can I tell a short little email story?
Yes.
Please.
Yeah, remember, Karen, you sent me an email asking if I'd like to be on your podcast, and I think I sent back an email saying something about, okay, yeah, sure, it sounds like fun, but what would we talk about? I have no idea what we would talk about, right? And Karen, you wrote an email back, and I'm not sure, like, if you wrote like, "Hello, this is Karen," eh? But I remember just seeing the part that said, we will talk about blah, blah, blah. We will talk about this and that. And don't worry about anything. And I'm like, it sounds like she's yelling at me. I hope I didn't tick her off when I asked her.
No. See, even if you leave the greeting off the email, like, hey, Mike, how's it going, Mike? It just sounds like, I have no time. I'm just being terse. I'm just telling you what I have to tell you.
It's true.
Often how I answer email. I figure if I'm answering your email, I feel like it'll come to you and you'll go, oh, these are the answers to the question.
I could talk about the format of email, maybe the entire episode. You have a very specific relationship with people that you can leave the greeting off of and just keep the information in.
I feel like Mike and Cole, we are close enough friends that I can just write them. And if I don't say, good morning, Mr. Cseke, or best of the day to you, Mr. Keir, they won't mind.
I have
Best of the day.
I have a friend who, he says, let's go to a restaurant, and I'm like, okay, think about a restaurant you want to go to, and send me the address, right? Because sometimes I forget to look up addresses, and so he sent me an email back like, I want to go to this particular restaurant, and you can look up the address yourself. Your dad bought you a computer, you lazy, It takes, and he actually wrote, in case you don't know, it takes 2 seconds to Google something.
It's true. But it also takes 2 seconds to just look something up for somebody and do them a favor. Let me talk about what we're actually here to talk about.
Wait, I want to do a transition. Here we go.
Okay.
It also takes 2 seconds for Karen to transition about what we're really talking about. Yes!
Awesome. It also only took 2 seconds after meeting Mike Keir to know that we would be friends, because I first met Mike Keir when he showed up to see an episode of my improvised soap opera, Dirty Laundry. And I would say that was 9 or 10 years ago, I think. And I think in the last 9 or 10 years, maybe Mike has and against his will, had to miss about 5 episodes. So
I remember,
he's seen 25 episodes a year for the last 10 years, and we adore him.
You've only missed 5 episodes, Mike?
Yeah,
I bet.
Well, one I kind of missed on purpose because I'm like, well, it's a holiday. They're not going to. And then Karen's like, oh, yeah, we still do them on holidays. We only do them we don't do them when Lunchbox transitions shows. And I'm like, okay, so I can go on a holiday one. And I'll tell you the honest truth. To get there sometimes, I've actually, because I use a service called Handy Bus. I'm explaining this to people who might not know. But yeah, it's like a handicap for people with disabilities. Yeah, so anyway, I've actually told them a little bit of a lie and say, look, I'm in the show. I need to get there. And And the one time I was actually I guest starred in one episode. So one time I actually said out loud, I should say to the operator, look, I'm in the show, and this time I'm not lying. I need to get there.
Don't you know who I think I am? Well, you came to the show, Mike. You came as because a class that you were part of, or a group that you were part of, had come as a group, and then you just never left, which is lovely. And that group is part of Inside Out Theatre. And let's move over to Col Cseke now, who is the artistic director of Inside Out Theatre. Tell us about Inside Out.
Yeah. Inside Out Theatre we are a deaf, disability, and mad theatre company. And do a whole schwackload of things in that world. We do professional shows created by deaf, disabled, mad artists. We do community programs that bring people together and use theater or other art practices as a way to just bring people together and build a community. And we do a lot of like accessible events and consulting and, trying to make arts and culture in Calgary accessible for everybody. And a pile of other stuff. And mostly we just get to like hang out with artists like Mike and create cool shows and get to know each other over many years.
I was there before Cole was there. I mean, I was there back in, I started in 2007. I don't remember the exact week, but I do remember, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention this, but it's because it's the way I remember it. I remember things because of, I like to watch wrestling, right? So I remember that in 2007, I joined Inside Out the same week that Deuce and Domino won the tag belts. And look those guys up, they're really good. And I don't know.
It's 100% true. I don't know how many times I've heard Mike say that. Well, just a second. That was the year that Stompin' Tom Backwash won the something belt.
And
so
sorry,
that must
Karen,
have been
could you just repeat that
2013.
wrestler name? Can you just repeat what you just said for the wrestler name?
I made that wrestler name up, and it's Stompin' Tom Backwash, and I would like that to stick.
I actually kind of like that. Stompin' Tom Backwash.
And my dad actually said I was talking to him on the phone, and don't mention nothing about wrestling because nobody cares about that except you. Oh my God.
This is a safe space for wrestling references.
Yeah,
100%.
It totally is. So Cole directed you and I in a show together 5 years ago. How many? 4?
I don't remember.
You can't even put a wrestling date to it there, Mike. You can't go, we did that show that at the time that such and such a wrestler was doing such and such a thing.
Well, I remember, that was the year, I think, the SmackDown and Raw did another brand split. So wrestling fans will know what I'm talking about. I think that was the year.
7 years ago, I found out, 2015.
Oh, look at that. My co-host and son has actually looked it up 7 years ago. I can't believe that. And it was a show that involved some improv, and we liked it. So we're going to do something else. So, Cole, because Mike and I don't know what we're going to do yet, what if you had to market this show right now?
We are in an interesting position because, sometimes Karen and I will bring on a guest that, one of us knows more, and then we kind of, give each other a fill-in of, here's what we'll talk about. And I kind of ask Karen, so what are we talking about? She goes, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see you in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say, because Karen said, come and be on mine and Griffin's podcast. I didn't even realize Griffin was your son. I'm like, you're sharing a podcast with the guy who ran the snack bar at Dirty Laundry?
Snack bar guy can have dreams. Snack bar guy maybe hosts a great interview.
Mike, I can't believe I never made that clear because, Griffin did.
I love that.
He did Snack Bar, but he was also in the original. He was one of the original cast members of our Dirty Laundry Young company, and he's guest starred with the main company. So I've had an opportunity to improvise with my son and with Col Cseke because Col Cseke used to direct the improvised soap opera. So we're this one big happy improv circle. So Mike, what do you think is happening with the show that you and I are doing on May 13th?
Well, I was just thinking that, you would make up a character. I've got 2 characters that I've made up that I can probably use from another show that I've done. But I just thought that my character would talk to your character, or we could talk it ourselves, or, whatever we want to do.
And Cole, what do you think is happening at our show on May 13th?
Now hold on.
I'm trying to be vague here.
I think Cole maybe knows more, so I want to hear now what you think, and then I want Cole to give us the real answer.
Okay, what I think is that Mike and I get to improvise together again, and it's going to be an online performance in the evening of May 13th. Later, Cole will tell us what time, and it'll be live streamed. And Mike and I have improvised together a number of times, and so we're going to do that again. So we're going to make some stuff up and hope it's entertaining. That's what I think is going to happen. But that's why I'm being purposely vague, because it's improv and who knows, right? So how do you describe it, Cole?
Well, so far I've told people it's an improv show with Mike and Karen. And it's online and it's going to be great. What I wonder, I think may be interesting for folks listening, maybe folks who haven't done a lot of improv themselves, is to talk about, here's what I do know, is that we are going to go into a development short, but we're going to have a bit of a development process this week. And then we're going to go into a rehearsal process, and then we're going to do the show. And I think for some folks who haven't created a new improv show, the idea of rehearsal feels like cheating, or the idea of development feels anachronistic, you should just show up on the day and someone gives you a suggestion and you improvise. So I think it's interesting to talk about the process of developing a new improv show and what development and rehearsal looks like. Because essentially what we're going to do before we get to the performance is we have our givens, and our givens are, it's going to be Mike and Karen as the improvisers, and it's going to be live streamed online. And that's it for givens right now. We also know that you and Mike know each other, like each other, and enjoy each other's company. So that's also a very important given. So what we'll do over development over the next couple of days is essentially land on a premise. What is the setting for this show? Why are these two people, or various people played by two people, coming together? So we're going to figure out a premise. We have an initial brainstorm list of I don't even remember what they were. A bunch of ideas. Maybe something to do with space and people video connecting with each other. Maybe a kind of Antiques Roadshow-ish sort of thing of appraisals. Appraisals as an idea, but not necessarily of objects. Yep. Maybe appraisals of wrestling moves or political ideals, something.
Yes.
This episode is brought to you by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider in Alberta, offering internet, electricity, and natural gas with low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities.
I need all of those things, and I'm in Alberta.
Hey!
Picture this.
What a coincidence. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your internet, electricity, and natural gas from. Park Power has low overhead, which in turn allows them to offer low competitive rates.
That's what I want. I want low rates. We're all tight for cash.
Yeah, and you're in your first apartment, so seriously, you should be looking at Park Power.
Don't scold me on the ad.
Reach out for a no obligations comparison by emailing estimates at parkpower.ca. If you decide to switch, it's easy. It's really just a change to your billing, and you can feel good knowing that you're helping to give back to our communities with your utilities bills. Learn more at parkpower.ca.
My dad kind of, he doesn't enjoy drama, but he might actually come watch it. And I was talking to him. I was a little bit nervous. I'm like, Dad, are you sure we can do a show on May 13th? We haven't even rehearsed yet. This is a couple of days ago I talked to him. So he goes, and he actually said this, idiot, you have taken drama for so many years, and this other person is going to be in the show is a professional, I can act things out in 5 seconds, and you don't think the two of you could figure out something?
I love when you talk about your dad, because as long as I've known you, you talk about your dad, and every time he talks to you, he validates what you're doing, but he seems to do it through your voice in a very grumpy way. But I met your dad working a casino for Inside Out, and he was a delightful gentleman. So I never believe you anymore when you say that he's grumpy or he acts grumpy.
Well, that's what, he just has a way of talking. I remember there used to be a restaurant next to, used to perform dirty laundry at the lunch bus. Used to be a restaurant there. And so I was in the restaurant, and one of the actresses came. I think it was an actress. But anyway, she was there. I said hi to her, and then when I got home, I'm like, Dad, guess what? I talked to one of the actresses. She was actually in the restaurant. What do you think the actress was doing in the restaurant? And he goes, "You're an actor as well, right?" And I'm not kidding. He actually said this. "You're an actor as well, right?" "Yeah." "Well, when you joined Inside Out, did some kind of magic spell come over you where you no longer wish to eat?"
Who knows what dark magic's Inside Out theater possesses?
I would like to really, in our development sessions this week, Cole, I would really like to explore this idea of wrestling. Maybe it's a show where Mike teaches me wrestling moves, and then we have like audience participation. I don't know how we do that, but pull them out of the screen, and then I headlock them or put them in a full Nelson or something.
I will also say that Mike claimed that he only had 2 characters, but I don't have a head of the show, but I wonder if a third character could be his own father. He's really winning me over.
I'm going to play Stomping Tom Backwash is what I'm going to do. Cole, tell us the sort of class that Mike is involved in and what other programs Inside Out offers.
Yeah, and because Mike's involved in a few, the main one, or not the main one, the first one that jumps out at me is we have a permanent new play ensemble called the Point of View Ensemble that Mike is a founding member of. And so this is a group of, there's about 8. Yeah, there's 8 ensemble members these days. And we've been meeting online since, March 2020 and still creating really cool stuff together. So it's 8 really cool individual artists that come together and we make plays. Like they create and perform plays. I'm usually there as a director and designers come, over the years. We're about to actually next week, Friday, May 6th, we have an online performance where we have a mock election, essentially. Like we've gone through an entire election process that is instigated by one of our members who plays a disgraced counselor named Cash Boomin, who's accused of all sorts of malfeasances in his short time in office, including, and my favorite one, so there's he takes illegal donations. He's connected to organized crime. He bribed voters. But the one that really got him kicked off council is it comes out that he bribed a zookeeper to be able to pet a penguin. And his defense is, who among us wouldn't?
Absolutely. I'm on Cash's side.
But he was eating a hot dog at the zoo beforehand and didn't wash his hands properly before. And so the penguin that he pet got sick and died after. The penguin got sick and died. And his defense was he did wash his hands, but he washed it in the penguin water. He washed the mustard off his hands in the penguin tank. So he gets kicked out of council. There's one of our members is the election commissioner who calls a special election. Mike plays a blowhard radio host called Siskel E. Lumbar, who's a kind of shock jock jackass radio host who has opinions. There's another very friendly media personality. And then we go into a full debate.
And the whole thing with my radio character is he's got a show called What's Wrong With You? Because basically, if you don't agree with him, if you don't agree with me as the radio host, then there's obviously something wrong with you. So he basically answers phone calls. So do you agree with me, or is there something wrong with you?
I want that character to appear in our show, no matter what. And that's May 6th, also streaming online?
Online, on the Inside Out Theater YouTube channel.
I think it's only fair that they elect a penguin to the council.
Well, the 2 candidates are, one is an evil genius who is named Dr. Nefarious, who, due to a skin condition, has to always wear a plague mask and a black hood. He's one of the candidates who has an economic recovery plan mostly based on robots, and Calgary becoming the robot center of the world. And then there's a very lovely candidate named Grace, whose motto is "Be safe, have fun at the same time." And she's a very human-centered campaign platform. And the audience will get to vote online. Like the live stream, live at home audience can vote for their candidate. Yeah, and this is a show we've been working on for a couple of years. Twice we attempted to move it into in-person rehearsals with an in-person audience. And we're just so good at planning things right at the crest of a wave. Right as like the fourth wave was going up, that's when we were going to do it. And we're like, okay, we'll reschedule for 6 months or 5 months from now, right as the next wave was coming up. So
I've seen a lot of the Inside Out performances online, and Michelle Brandenburg and Jeremy Park are usually in some way involved, and their technical genius it's one of the better online performances I've seen are the Inside Out ones, because they've got scene changes and music cues and background changes and costumes. So it's really, really impressive. So that is the May 6th.
I've also heard rumors that Dr. Nefarious has some really cool ideas for some curriculum changes that I think just because of the plague mask might not be worth discounting, you know?
Oh, he's got ideas.
Speaking of nefarious, I once had a dream that I was being nefarious, that I was being evil, that I was running around causing all sorts of havoc, which leads us to the next segment of our podcast, which is because in our theme song, Alexander Cowman sings Tell Me Your Dreams Over Bacon and Eggs, we would like to hear the weirdest dream you've ever had. Like if you're a nighttime dreamer and you remember your dreams, the weirdest dream you've ever had, or the one that you had as a kid that stuck with you, a reoccurring dream, or just the inane one you had last night.
Yeah, I'd have to say that it's kind of weird that I remember I actually fell asleep once with the TV on, and it had Sesame Street on, and I remember like dreaming letters and numbers and stuff. So I guess maybe the TV got into my conscience, because I'm like, wow, Sesame Street's on. That's kind of cool. So I did this thing where like, okay, I'm going to leave the TV on, see if I dream about the same thing again. And
Exactly.
How about you, Cole? Are you a nighttime dreamer, and do you have one you could share with us?
I'm really not a dreamer, or I don't remember dreams, and I just never have as a kid. Maybe possibly because since I was a kid, I've been an insomniac. Like I just don't sleep well ever. So I don't remember dreams, but I do often have chunks of time that are kind of in between asleep and awake, where I'm waiting to fall asleep. That my mind goes to some trippy places. The one that jumped into my mind was last summer during the heat dome and the wildfire smoke that was here in Calgary. I do remember it was, and I live in an apartment in the Beltline in Calgary, and it's so hot. Like it was just awfully hot. And there was one night at like 2:30 in the morning or so, I ended up just like taking a pillow, and we have a tiny little corner balcony that's just long enough for me to lie down on. And there was quite a while from like 2-ish to 4-ish in the morning where I just laid outside because it was 15 degrees cooler than inside my apartment, and did really like, I went on this mental trip about all my anxieties about insomnia and climate change and smoke and heat and things like that, where I really plotted out a potential future for myself where I just switched and became nocturnal. I was like, maybe I should just live at night.
Wow.
For a couple of hours, just imagined my life where I just slept during the day and just like became a nocturnal person and just stayed up all night, where it would be cooler and quieter and I could do my own thing. I mean, I have a 6-year-old kid. I have a wife. I have a full-time job that mostly exists during the day. There's a lot of things in the clear light of day. The next morning, I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't make sense. But for a good couple of hours, I was like, what kind of animals would be out at night? I bet if I walk, or I bet I would meet, I bet I would commune with coyotes. Like this is that for 2 hours. So that's...
I don't think it's a bad idea.
I think I live very close to Cole. I also live in an apartment in the Beltline. I've seen Cole on like some street corners sometimes, and it gets very hot in the same area. My tactic is I sleep sometimes in my bathtub, just because my cold bathtub is just cooler than my fancy sheets. So the problem is that sometimes if I sleep in my bathtub, I will dream that I am trapped in a coffin because around 3 sides of my body is hard bathtub. So I go, I guess I'm buried alive and in a coffin. Sleeping on a porch sounds way better.
Here's a little tip from my mother, Sandy Moser. If you have a fan, just your normal oscillating fan or whatever, put a big bowl of ice in front of your fan. And seriously, it acts like a mini air conditioner, and because it blows through the evaporating cold water. There you go. You're welcome. Tips from our podcast, The Breakfast Dish.
Here's one tip that I like for The Breakfast Dish, and that is that you should check out the Alberta Podcast Network, because The Breakfast Dish is part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The intro music you just heard and the outro music you're about to hear has been composed by Alexandra Kalman. All graphic design for The Breakfast Dish has been done by Morgan Ermter. Karen, what else is coming up?
If you would like Coaldale, Alberta, and I do, I would like you to go to the Gem of the West Museum on Friday, May 27th from 6:30 to 10:30 p.m. for the concert and dessert auction. I can't tell you how much I just want to go bid on some desserts. So there's music and auction. It's at the Gem of the West Museum, featuring music by Gabriel Thane. Dean Oseen will be your auctioneer. But seriously, concert and dessert auction, I'm just assuming that I'm bidding on desserts. Tickets are $25 a seat. You can also buy a table of 8 for cheaper.
$20 on the cream puff.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike and Cole, thank you very much for joining us on The Breakfast Dish.
Pals, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
The way that we like to wrap things up here on The Breakfast Dish is that, as Mike previously mentioned, Karen is an expert of making up something and acting it in 5 seconds. So sometimes we plan questions that we don't have planned, and we don't know it, and I don't know it, and she doesn't know it, but I'll still ask her to ask you it. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Each of you has to give me the name of a wrestler that has a breakfast theme behind it. So if there was a new wrestler and it had to sound something like a breakfast thing, what would that wrestler be called?
Scrambled move guy.
Scrambled what?
Scrambled move guy. He gets all his moves scrambled up.
Ooh, I really like that. Unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do.
And he's going to do them wrong. Cole?
That's so funny. I also thought of a scrambled egg pun. I imagined a tag team duo called the Scrambled Gregs. It's just 2 guys named Greg. They'll mess you up.
And as we leave the podcast, I will say this. I guarantee you, if I have my way, that on May 13th, when Inside Out live streams the improv show with Mike and I, we will be playing 2 characters called the Scrambled Gregs. Thanks for listening.
Here comes the crowd. Greg, get her with the chair. Other Greg.
This has been The Breakfast Dish.